now his positions are in transition. The president-elect says he won't prosecute Hillary Clinton. And denying climate change, well, that's changing too.
As Trump acknowledges he won't be following through on some of the promises he made during the heat of the campaign. Promises like this one.
I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation.
So all of this news comes amidst confusion over some of Trump's policy positions. Politico actually counted 15 flip-flops since Election Day.
I guess my point is, liberals relax. He's not the crazy right-wing nut job that you think he is.
Is Trump abandoning some of his key campaign promises or just moderating his rhetoric as newly elected presidents sometimes do? And what about the coverage of the Wisconsin recount that he calls a scam? Tucker Carlson, the newest Fox host, on Trump's impact on the media's battered reputation. Digital disruption. Facebook is battling fake news. Twitter is closing down alt-right accounts. Is social media facing a credibility crisis? Plus, the NFL has always been a television juggernaut, but this year the league is being thrown for a loss. What explains the big drop in ratings? I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. It was an off-the-record session at Trump Tower with top executives from NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox News, and CNN, as well as such anchors as George Stephanopoulos, Charlie Rose, Lester Holt, and Wolf Blitzer. My sources say that while President-elect Trump voiced his complaints about the way he's been covered, especially to CNN President Jeff Zucker, it was a somewhat cordial session, but some versions are much more dramatic. The New York Post called it a blanking firing squad, with Trump supposedly telling Zucker, "I hate your network, everyone at CNN is a liar, and you should be ashamed," and criticizing NBC reporter Katie Tur without mentioning her name. The New Yorker's David Remnick, a fierce Trump critic, quoted one unnamed participant as calling Trump a blustering, bluffing blowhard whose conduct was blanking outrageous, and then another professed to be emotionally blanking pissed. I'm cleaning this up a little bit. But Kellyanne Conway, while confirming that Trump said the assembled journalists had been flat wrong about the election, challenged those accounts.
Nobody left there in a huff. Nobody has called me and complained that they felt that they had been bamboozled.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage of Donald Trump's dealings with the media, Aaron McPike, political commentator and former reporter for Real Clear Politics. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. And Mara Liasson of National Public Radio, a Fox News contributor. Aaron, so Donald Trump ripped or chided or slammed some of the network executives and anchors, depending on which version you believe. Doesn't a president-elect have a right to call on the media and complain about his coverage?
He does, and I would point out that President Obama does this occasionally as well, and you do hear about it then when President Obama will meet with TV anchors and executives. If he's not happy about the way he's being covered, it also gets leaked to the press. Donald Trump is going to be having these meetings going forward with TV anchors and executives going forward, so I think he's well within his rights. It's just beginning this relationship now, going into the new phase of Donald Trump and his presidency.
Yeah, and you know, some media critics out there saying, well, they shouldn't have gone because it was off the record. Every president does versions of this, especially on State of the Union Day. The network anchors all come in. It's all off the record for guidance and that sort of thing. So, Molly, if Trump went after Jeff Zucker over CNN's coverage, so what? Doesn't that help clear the air?
Well, I would love it if he had actually said to Jeff Zucker that CNN should be ashamed of itself and that everyone there is a liar. That's just kind of funny rhetoric. But more than anything, it seems like the media really need to start taking responsibility for how much they messed things up. There's been a little bit of reflection, people saying, oh, well, we read the polls wrong or whatnot. No, there was a really major problem with everything about how they covered this race, everything that they did about Donald Trump, how they mischaracterized his positions, how negative they were to him, how negative they were to his people.
And does that continue during this transition?
Well, of course it's continued during the transition. And the thing that is bad about that is that we need a media that can hold President Trump accountable. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, they need to reestablish credibility and trust. And they have to admit how much they messed up and start covering facts instead of narratives.
Perhaps you're holding your breath. Mara, didn't this session also give the network big shots a chance to voice their concerns about access and other issues?
Sure, but I don't know in this brave new world where Donald Trump has a completely different approach to the media if that matters. And I think that's why you heard people saying that they would have been better off having this on the record, because of the entire thing you just read. You know, the characterizations, then it becomes this big food fight about who said what and who was mad, and everybody gets to characterize it the way they want to. 2 days later, or 1 day later, when he met with the New York Times, I can't remember how many days, it was completely different. Everything was transparent, and everybody in America could read exactly what he said.
Right. There's a little bit of irony here in journalists reporting on an off-the-record meeting with journalists about what, based on leaks, about what was said or not said. And by the way, to your point, Aaron, President-elect Obama, this is 8 years ago, went to dinner at George Will's house. Krauthammer was there, Bill Kristol. It was not on the record. Okay. So let me turn now to something that's getting a lot of play, especially today, and that is Jill Stein, the Green Party presidential candidate, has obtained a recount in the state of Wisconsin. Hillary Clinton's campaign had not called for a recount, but is cooperating with this effort, and Donald Trump has called it a scam, and he kind of went off today on Twitter, recounting many things that Hillary Clinton had said about, well, wouldn't Trump accept the results of the election and how that would be dangerous for democracy. So my question is simple. How much coverage does this recount deserve?
It shouldn't get as much as it's getting. There are recounts and irregularities that get reported on after every single election, and usually they are briefs in newspapers, or anchors will give it 2 sentences maybe in a newscast. But Hillary Clinton herself is not exactly challenging the election in that she is not withdrawing her concession, and the outcome of the election is not in question. The Clinton campaign, even in talking about this, has said they just want to make sure that there was no hacking by Russia or something, and they're trying to keep their supporters energized to some small degree, but the election is not going to be changed here.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. The Clinton campaign lawyers quoted as saying there's no actionable evidence that the campaign has of outside hacking. There may have been, but Molly, Trump won Wisconsin by 22,000 votes, and yet this is getting an awful lot of traction in the media.
Yeah, what I'd like to see is a little bit more consistency from the media. When Donald Trump used to talk about election rigging, we were told this was a threat to democracy, dangerous, horrifying. Then when Harry Reid asked the FBI director to investigate election rigging, that was treated like responsible journalists would just cover it like news. The Post and the New York Times had stories about how you could hack an election. Then when we had that debate where Donald Trump talked again about not accepting the results until they happened, we had, 3 days of nonstop coverage about how this was, again, a horrifying threat to democracy, delegitimizing the process and whatnot. And now we're back again to treating this like it's a totally normal thing to call for a recount. It's what we need to see is more consistency from the media and just a more moderated level of coverage.
First of all, the media isn't one thing. We have to keep on saying that over and over again. Yes. But what I'm interested in is, yes, this is probably getting more coverage than it deserves. Although after an election where Russians have, intelligence sources hacked into all sorts of election-related emails, maybe it should get a little more than it would have in the past. And she's not contesting the results of the election. And Donald Trump said that he might not accept the results of the election unless he won. So there's a lot of hypocrisy to go around.
That part was a joke. He said he would look at the situation at the time before the election. And the press kicked him around for that.
Yeah, but what's happening now, what I'm interested in is how much attention Donald Trump is giving to this. He tweeted about this a lot, trying to make Hillary look like a hypocrite, ridiculing Jill Stein. Why is he spending so much time on this? Either is he worried about something in Wisconsin?
So you're saying he's elevating it as a story.
He's elevating it, no doubt. Tons of tweets on this from him and an official statement.
Molly.
Maybe he doesn't want coverage of his business conflicts abroad. I don't know why.
Well, the media should take a cue. If Donald Trump thinks it's a good story for him, it probably is a good story for him. And they should think about whether they want to also be adding fuel to the fire here.
All right. Let's go back now to the meeting that Trump had with the New York Times. Now, part of that, a session with publisher Arthur Sulzberger Jr. was off the record. Then there was an on-the-record interview. And here's an audio clip from the part that was an on-the-record interview.
I've been treated extremely unfairly, in a sense, in a true sense. I wouldn't only complain about the Times. I would say the Times was about the roughest of all.
And Aaron, Donald Trump has been complaining about the New York Times, by my count, for a year and a half, threatening to sue the paper, talking about the failing New York Times. So why would he go to the paper as a sign of respect and have this meeting?
Well, quite obviously, he reads the New York Times
every day,
every single day. Yeah. And the New York Times has always covered the presidency, maybe even more so than any other publication. It's very clear that the Obama administration has leaked many stories about what President Obama is doing to the Times. It's an important paper. It's It's the biggest paper that there is. So, of course, that's where he needs to start.
Well, Trump also in that session called the Times a jewel, an international jewel, and said anybody, including Sulzberger, can call him if he has a problem, except Maureen Dowd. She's been too rough on me, he said. So, but you remember the tweet when it looked like the meeting was off, Molly? Trump tweeted, "I canceled today's meeting with the failing New York Times when the terms and conditions of the meeting were changed at the last moment." Not nice. But that wasn't true, that the Times had tried to change it, and then, of course, it was back on.
Yeah, and who can say what actually happened there? There were rumors about some of Trump's aides trying to get him to cancel the meeting because they thought it wouldn't be good for him.
Such as Reince Priebus.
In fact, it was a great meeting that they had together, and it seemed like it was helpful to both of them. He was able to articulate his position. I commend them for publishing the entire transcript. That helped you actually get a feel for what the meeting was like. But it was even interesting how the media then portrayed this as if he were flip-flopping on everything.
Well, we'll get to that in the next segment.
Okay.
But let me just close this segment by asking you, does this kind of session, would the New York Times perhaps be more inclined to give the president the benefit of the doubt or soften just a bit?
I think so. I think that there was a lot of talk among Times columnists after the meeting. Well, maybe is he changing? We don't know. Or is he just trying to speak to the audience that's right in front of him at the time, which he's been known to do, or say what he just heard from the last person he talked to. So I think that